Hi everybody, I'm Janet Pletcher. I'm the author of a blog called Planet Cheese, which I hope you'll start reading. If you don't already, you can subscribe on my website, janetpletcher.com. It's complimentary and it comes in your inbox every week. I'm also a volunteer for a new grassroots movement called Victory Cheese, which is modeled after the old victory gardens of World War II. The mission of Victory Cheese is really to try to help a lot of the struggling American cheesemakers that are really having a hard time right now, given that people aren't buying artisan cheeses like they used to. They are, restaurants, of course, have been closed and food service is down. So cheesemakers have been struggling, and Victory Cheese is a way of trying to get more of this cheese moving from the farm to your table. So I have put together, along with dozens of other people across the country who are cheese enthusiasts or cheese professionals, we've put together what we're calling Victory Cheese boxes. And I have created a dozen of them. They're for sale at igourmet.com, the online cheese merchant. And you bought one. Thank you. You bought the American Cheese Society Blue Ribbon Winners box, and it came to you in this little muslin bag. And I thought it would be a good idea for me to run through the three cheeses in your bag so that you had a good idea of what you were about to taste before you tasted it. So that's what we're going to do today in this quick little video. And I thought we would let's start with this little guy in the middle, because it's the youngest. I have to tell you, it's smelling really aromatic right now in my kitchen because all three of these are pretty robust cheeses. There's nothing delicate about any of them, but we're gonna start with the youngest, which is a cheese from California, from Central Coast Creamery in the Paso Robles area, and it's a goat cheese. It's a washed rind goat cheese, which is a pretty unusual style. There are very few people making washed rind goat cheeses in the US, and I cannot tell you why, but I was really happy when Central Coast decided to do it. These three cheeses are together in your bag because they are all cheeses that have won blue ribbons at the American Cheese Society competition, which is an annual judging. I would say it's the most prestigious judging for American artisan cheeses in the country. And it's really important to win. It says a lot if you float to the top of your category. The judges are professionals. You don't just win you don't get a blue ribbon just by being the best cheese in your category. You have to get to a certain number of points to get a blue ribbon. So sometimes there are no blue ribbons given in a category. All three of these cheeses have won their categories. In fact, all of them have won more than once. This one, Central Coast Dreamweaver, is a very new cheese. It only came out maybe in 2017, I think. It won its category the first year. 2 years later, it repeated that. So it's a pretty remarkable debut for this cheese. As I said, it's goat's milk, and look how pale it is. It's kind of an ivory color, which is I think a professional can tell just from looking that this is a goat cheese from this ivory color, because it doesn't have the beta carotene of the cow's milk cheeses. The rind is it's very thin, which is nice, and it's kind of sticky, tacky, and that's because this cheese, while it aged, was washed multiple times with brine. That's why we call it a washed rind cheese, and that brine makes this moist, salty surface that good bacteria like it, and so they settle on the outside, and you get this kind of flesh color, salmon color, pale salmon color on the outside. I can tell Dreamweaver leaves the creamery when it's maybe about 6 weeks old. It continues to just get better. 2 months, 3 months, 4 months old even, it's going to get softer and squishier, and that's why I know this is fairly young, because it's not very squishy yet, but it's still going to be delicious. I'm going to guess that it's probably 6 to 7 weeks old, and it smells always to me like yeast, like bread yeast, and it's got just a faint smoky taste to me. I have no idea where that comes from, but you can see it's semi-soft. as I said later, it's going to get more supple and squishy. It smells stronger than it tastes. It's not a super strong cheese. You're going to get a nice acidity from the goat's milk and that wonderful yeasty aroma. Great with dark bread, and definitely for me, this is a beer cheese or maybe a kind of a Pinot Gris if I were going for a wine with it. But a great Belgian Saison would be terrific with it. Now let's see, we want to have our blue cheese last. So let's move to this cheese, which is cow's milk, raw milk, Farmstead. These raw milk and Farmstead are pretty hard to find these days in the U.S. It's getting to be an increasingly small category, so I really admire this creamery for sticking with the raw milk. This is from Springbrook Farm in Vermont, and this is their flagship cheese. It's called Tarentaise. It's the one that they debuted with maybe 20, 25 years ago. It's modeled after a French cheese called Beaufort, and they use these, it has this rind that's concave like that, and they do it by putting it in a mold that you can cinch, like a cinched waist. And so that's always a sign of both Beaufort and Tarentaise. So this is modeled after the mountain cheeses of France and Switzerland. It's very firm. It's aged probably about 10 months at least. And it always smells very, very nutty. Unlike this Dreamweaver, this cheese is made by cooking the curds, so you get a more compact paste or interior. I always get, this cheese always reminds me of breakfast because it smells like bacon and a little bit like eggs and toast and butter, and definitely very, very nutty. This is just a sublime piece of cheese making. Look how nice and thin the rind is. This is a natural rind. This just happens based on what's growing in their caves at Springbrook Farm. Another thing to admire about this cheese and about all the Springbrook Farm cheeses is that the profits from the sale of this cheese support a foundation. They make the cheese to do good. They support what's called the Farms for City Kids Foundation, which is their own foundation, and the purpose of the foundation is to bring inner city kids to the farm to have a rural experience. They spend a week on the farm, they take classes, they milk the cows, they muck out the barns, and they do the kind of standards lessons. So it's a great experience for these inner city kids, and the cheese sales support that. So that's another reason to love Tarentaise, which has just always wins its category. It's just a reliable winner at the American Cheese Society. And our last cheese is a blue cheese from California, near where I live in Napa Valley. This cheese is from Marin County in California on the coast. It's Point Reyes Farmstead cheese, Bay Blue. They also make one called Original Blue, but this is Bay Blue, which is their natural rinded cheese. You can see that it has a very thin natural rind. Original Blue, the sister cheese, has a foil wrap. It doesn't have a rind. This one has a very thin natural rind. Now this is another Farmstead cheese. Point Reyes has its own cows. Cows with the best view of any cows in the country, I think. They look out over the Pacific Ocean, and this is of the two blue cheeses that Point Reyes makes. This is their more mellow one. Bay Blue, this cheese is very nutty. It always smells to me like a saltine cracker, and a little bit like a salted caramel. It's got that kind of nutty brown butter smell, and it's not a super pungent blue. Sometimes, let me tell you something important. If you take this cheese, whether you bought it in your Victory cheese box or somewhere else, and you find it kind of wet on the outside, this happens with blue cheeses. They still have a lot of moisture in them typically, and they weep. So if you buy a cheese like that, when you take it out of the wrap, just pat it dry, pat off some of that moisture. That's it's to be expected, and it's not a defect in any way. Yeah, this is a more pungent piece of this Bay Blue than I'm accustomed to. It's smelling Very robust, nutty, and I am getting those caramel notes, and I just can't wait to taste it. I think, again, a beer, like a malty beer would be great with this, or a dessert wine for sure. So you have these three ACS Blue Ribbon winners in your bag. I want to thank you for supporting Victory Cheese and remind you that there are 11 more Victory Cheese collections on iGourmet that I created. I hope you'll check them out. I think you're going to enjoy all of them. Thank you.